They don't look... Isn't that really cool? Look, it froze pretty hard in here, but look at all the living. Can you see that cauliflower head in there? You are the happiest when it's freezing. Hello, welcome to Sage and Stone Homestead. If you have not met me yet, my name is Heather. We live and garden in southwestern Kentucky, zone 7A, and I have an all right fall garden this year. Historically, we've been growing a garden since 2019. My fall gardens have been hit or miss. I have had some nice ones. I have had some successes and some good harvests, but this is our first year growing in raised beds in that greenhouse over there. It's got snow over the top of it, and I wanted to come out and do a garden tour because it's really fun in the greenhouse. It's kind of like a cave when it has snow on it. This snow is much, but it blew in as part of a Arctic blast. And we're actually going to enter the perennial garden from this direction. There's really not much to see here, especially since it's been freezing cold, literally. But I'll show you a couple things before we cart some other things back up to the greenhouse. My muscadine grapes never did get any bigger or, you know, ripe at all. Right now they're frozen solid. But it was still really encouraging to see that they're there. At some point I need to prune all the grapes, but I need to look into how to do that first. This is our first year with them. Strawberries under snow, asparagus under snow. I'm surprised any of this still has green color. Some of our volunteer garlic poking up. These frost tolerant greens have not loved the cold. They don't look good, guys. These are my rutabagas and my beets, and as far as I can tell, when they thaw out, they're not dead, but they're totally not happy. I do have these hoops here and I could throw something on them, but at this point I think maybe it's a little too late. I'll have to see what they look like when the sun comes out. We are going to be having a super cold night in a couple of nights, like down into the mid-teens, and I may cover them for that because that's pretty cold even for frost tolerant things to be exposed. The last thing that's living out here, I guess there's a couple things. I've got my walking onions that are poking up above the snow, and then this is dill. I'm hoping that this survives, and when the snow melts I'll be able to freeze dry some of that because it's also frost tolerant to a point, and mid-teens is, like I said, a lot for anything. I have these Nanking cherries in the bigger pots, and then this rose here. And they're gonna do better over winter if I put them in the greenhouse, just a little bit of extra protection, because essentially their roots are above ground, and the roots staying insulated is what's gonna help get them through the winter. Isn't that really cool? Look. Oh, it's so fun. Now, when the sun comes out and beats down on the snow, it will melt pretty easily. It's only, you know, a dusting out there. But as you can see right here, see how there's daylight? We've got, this greenhouse really is kind of drafty, but even then it's 25 outside and just over 32. It's not exactly freezing in here, which, you know, is awesome. The snow definitely helps. Snow is an insulator, but things like this Malabar spinach, they died a few days ago. I haven't come in here to clean them out, but it kind of smells like I need to clean the refrigerator out in here because of stuff like this. I need to get this cleaned out before it's really gross. The peppers died the day that we harvested them. It froze pretty hard that night and these died. So that was a good call. And over here I had some volunteer tomatoes. They died. It froze pretty hard in here. I had wondered if maybe some of these volunteer tomatoes that were kind of nestled amongst the leaves of these plants would live, but nope. It was even too much for them. The reason that we have a greenhouse isn't to get things like tomatoes and peppers very far into the winter. It's so that we can shield our cold-loving plants from some of the worst cold, and they're thriving. I did have a very valid question. Heather, what about the pumpkins? Pumpkins can't handle a freeze. So, a little bit of a story. I grew up in Maine, and we always bought pumpkins and put them on our front porch. October 31st in Maine, so around Halloween, is very, very cold most years. I think this last year was really warm up in Maine, but that's not normal. Normally it's like freezing, and it does come up above freezing sometimes, you know, especially when the sun hits the front porch or whatever. And growing up, I never remember our pumpkins freezing one night and then being mush the next morning. But when you Google, that's what you see is going to happen. And I mean, every year, even when I didn't grow pumpkins, I've purchased pumpkins. They're usually like funky varieties, gourds potentially too. Gourds kind of have a thicker skin to them. But even when I've purchased squash, like Hubbard squash and things, and had them as decoration on my front porch, eventually, yeah, they break down, but they seem to handle quite a bit of freeze thaw without getting damaged. Now, I don't know if that is true of this variety. These are Dutch fork pie pumpkins. This is my first year growing them. The pumpkins have been in here for a few freezes at this point, but again, we're freezing very hard coming up soon, and so I don't know, anything could really happen, and I will be okay with whatever happens. When I put these pumpkins in the ground, all I ever wanted was one pumpkin, and we got 80. So just because you are blessed with 80 pumpkins doesn't mean that 80 pumpkins have to go into the belly of humans. There's a lot of nutrition in these pumpkins that can feed our animals, and you all know chickens would love a smushy dead pumpkin. And so would Chloe. So even if some of these freeze too hard and start to kind of break down, it's not a bad thing. But it will be very interesting to see how they do in here. I actually started growing these pumpkins because of Jess at Roots and Refuge Farm. She grew them and they were a hands-off crop for her. They seem to be very resistant to things like squash bugs and squash vine borers. And those are some of the main pests that we deal with here. And we had a lot of success with them too. And she stores them in her greenhouse and high tunnels and her barn, and she said that they lasted a long time. So I was just doing what she does, and it seemed to work for her. So I guess we'll see for ourselves. If you see the random snakes lying around, don't let that worry you. These are fake. So I guess we did kind of start down there talking about how my Malabar spinach is dead, but look at all the living. Oh, it is so beautiful in here, filling out gloriously. This particular bed of the lettuces, it's moving kind of slow. It probably doesn't help that these big cabbages are shading them out. Honestly, I want the cabbages way more, so I'm not sad about that. They are heading up, all of them. I had a little bit of issue with cabbage loopers this year, but I'm pretty sure we are at the time of year now where we really don't have to worry about that. And we get to just wait and see how big our cabbages get. Normally this variety of cabbage gets to be about the size of an adult human head. The soil in this bed is brand new and still kind of trying to balance out, so that would be amazing, but I'm not quite expecting that. We walked past an entire bed of broccoli, and every single broccoli plant is putting on a head, which is really, really, really exciting. Broccoli is one of my family's favorite foods, and we're growing a lot, but honestly, it's probably not enough to satisfy our love for it. But what's cool is we're coming up in just a couple weeks where we need to start seeds again. I need to start more brassicas, and so we've got these guys in here coming to a head at good timing. And then by the time those seedlings are ready to plant out, roughly in February, we'll be able to tear these out, put those in, and get another crop at the end of spring this coming year. So interspersed throughout a lot of broccoli, I do have some cauliflower plants, and there's one over here that's a lot easier to see, but they are also starting to head up. Can you see that cauliflower head in there? They're beautiful. My Brussels sprouts and kohlrabi are moving a little bit slower than I had hoped that they would, but I'm still going through kind of a trial and error about when to start certain things so that I can harvest them, you know, at specific times. I actually started the majority of the seeds that you see in here, I believe it was August, and I used to start my seeds in September, so I started them a month early, and I'm still not getting Brussels sprouts by Christmas, so I may have to start them even earlier than that, probably keeping them indoors for some time. These here are a smaller variety of cabbage, and they've started to head up as well. It's like the size of a little golf ball. Cabbage is just so pretty. It's one of my favorite plants. What we have growing on the trellis here are a couple different varieties of peas, and none of my peas have set blooms, so we don't have any peas. This trellis I actually did an experiment where I chopped down about a foot of growth off of the top of the plants, trying to trigger them into a response where they put on some flower. But it didn't work. They just put on more greens, and I have noticed that the peas are starting to get kind of a mildew going on. I don't really want this to spread in the greenhouse, so I may be pulling these at the same time that I pull that out. Very, very likely this is a sign that our soil has too much nitrogen. And I'm not really surprised about that. We put in brand new bagged soil in here, some hay at the bottom, and some barn clean out, so manure. All of that can be pretty nitrogen heavy, and we're still working on the balance. So this is a visual that lets me know what's going on, and so I know what to do when it comes to amending the beds for springtime. Definitely more of like the phosphorus and potassium needs to be put in this bed and less of the nitrogen. I had a volunteer birdhouse gourd grow on my table in here. This is a table. There's things on the table, but it also grew and set some gourds down on the table for me, which is so funny. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 8, 9 bonus gourds up here. These gourds, these dry ones, these were from last year, and I plan to do something with those this winter. It takes a really long time for birdhouse gourds to cure. I had wanted to use some of the birdhouse gourds as Christmas gifts last year, and I had picked them, some of them, in the middle of summer, hoping that they would cure by the time it was Christmas time. They did not, but they're cured this year. Our pak choi bed is doing well. You can see that these plants, it looks like these are frozen. These are kind of close to the sidewall where, see, we do have kind of a draft. Frost tolerant plants will freeze. It's just that they have enough sugars in their cell walls in order to not freeze completely solid, and that protects their cell walls from bursting, because that's what happens when a plant dies of freezing. Is it, if you know, water expands when it freezes and it completely breaks the cell walls apart, and you can't really recover from that. We're definitely getting to the time of year where things are growing. They're just kind of creeping along. And the way that our weather works, it's cold right now. Like I said, we're having a night coming up in the teens really soon. But in a couple of weeks, it'll probably be mid-50s outside, maybe upper 30s at night. It won't be too bad. We'll kind of yo-yo for a little bit. Our most consistent cold is, you know, into January, and then we start to get kind of yo-yo temps in February again. So it's not too bad most of the time. The carrots here are definitely moving slower. I feel like they haven't done anything in a long time. They've just kind of stayed. Maybe these guys are growing roots downward. This bed looks less happy than some of the others, and I don't really know why. I'm sure the plants are fine, but they just look a little wilty, right? Not really sure what's going on in here. Oh, wow. I don't think the moisture meter likes the cold. It doesn't know what to think. No, it looks like it's fine. So I don't think it's lack of water, but what may be going on with some of the plants is they got to enjoying the heat that we had, and the cold came in really fast, and there wasn't much acclimation. I think that they're going to be okay, though. They're just a little bit shocked. Our peach trees on wheels, the bonfire peach tree, they're doing good. This is what they should do in wintertime, is drop their leaves. It looks like they have the beginnings of this spring's flower buds already on. And they're such beautiful pink flowers. I really look forward to those. We're kind of all over the place in the greenhouse today, but you can probably tell that I have started doing the cut and come again harvesting of some of the greens in here. This purpling that's on these leaves, it's from the Malabar spinach. These little purple berries are falling, and they have essentially a natural dye in them that is making a lot of things purple. But yeah, same thing with the kale over here. This is me coming through and harvesting. What I'll do is actually harvest the bigger outer leaves and leave some of the smaller leaves in the center, because the plants will grow out of the middle and it'll keep growing and I can keep harvesting really all winter long. Especially if we have a warm winter, the plants will do a lot of growing, but right now it's pretty cold. It's been more than 2 weeks since I showed you a garden update, and it might be longer than that in between this update and the next update. But of course we'll be coming into the garden and harvesting things, but we're at the time of year where it's growing real slow, and I won't have that much to update you with in 2 weeks' time. The fastest thing growing is the radishes right now. They're very dependable with that. Of course, I'll be bringing you in the greenhouse, potentially for some of the clean out, but definitely for some of the harvests. I hope you guys are enjoying Vlogmas thus far. I did receive my felting needles in the mail a couple days ago. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I bought an advent calendar. It's a crafting advent calendar that's like a needle felting, and I broke the needle on the first craft. I only had the one needle, so I had to wait for it to come in. So I think that we are due for a makeup day for the advent calendar. Sounds like a really cozy, nice, warm indoor project. So I think we'll do that. I'll see you again soon.